Hello, and welcome to the food programme. I'm Sheila Dillon, and today we're talking about honey. You know, what it is, what it should be, and what it often isn't, in spite of what its label says. I hope you enjoy it.
We're walking down through the perennial garden. It's looking a bit sad at the moment, but there have been resources for pollinators.
So all this planting, and there's a lot of many layered planting around us, is for the bees.
Yes, and it's not just for bees, it's for all pollinators, because bees tend to get all the glory.
I'm in Essex in January and it's raining, so the chances of seeing a bee are, well, about zero. But even though she's allergic to their stings, they are the passion of my host, the beekeeper, author of Planting for Honeybees, and honey sommelier, Sarah Wyndham-Lewis.
This is our home apiary. These are our pet bees, if you like, so they're nothing to do with the honey that we're making and selling.
Oh, you don't take honey from these?
They're here as a queen breeding programme. As it happens, these girls here in these hives, who are the queen breeding programme, do make a small amount of the most delicious honey.
All right, we're going in out of the rain.
We are, my goodness, we are. It's absolutely dismal, isn't it?
Sarah and her husband Dale Gibson are the founders of Bermondsey Street Bees. They supply their honey directly to hotels, restaurants and bars and cruise ships. Their hives are spread around 18 sites across Essex, Hertfordshire and London, near Tower Bridge and in the rewilded areas of Docklands. They also keep bees for the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Come in, do. It's nice and warm in here. We are bottling up the honey from Lambeth Palace Gardens. They have an 800-year-old garden with the most extraordinary amount of biodiversity. There were how many pollens when we did pollen analysis? 84 different floral sources marked by pollens. There's quite a lot of additional floral sources that you wouldn't necessarily be able to track, except perhaps through DNA profiling. So you would be able to say safely well in excess of 100 different floral sources in these jars, which makes it the most amazing honey. It's very multi-layered and full of different flavours.
We generally do things like the way that a French vineyard would do it. So we have a sort of one honey from one apiary site. So it's like a monopole wine from that one vineyard becomes the honey which is consistently what we put together and sell.
My description of honey is that it is a picture postcard of a place and a time, just as a bottle of wine can be. It really is. It conjures up the heather moors. You close your eyes, you inhale the smell of that heather honey, and there you are standing on the heather moors. And that's how honey should be. It should be hugely three-dimensional and evocative, not just some sweet thing that you put on toast. There's so many other sources of more reputable sweetness than blended honey.
And that is the crux of the controversy at the heart of this programme, the sticky business of where our honey actually comes from.
I mean, honey fraud is a real thing, Sheila.
Chris Elliott is Honorary Professor of Food Safety at Queen's University, Belfast, and the man the government put in charge of finding the truth about the horse meat scandal. Not someone who minces his words about that or about honey fraud.
And it's been going on for a very, very long time. There is a lot of dark arts associated with honey. I mean, it's a very, very widely traded commodity, very widely used. And it's not just the little jars of honey that we buy off the shelves. It goes into so many different food products. So very widely traded, complex supply chains coming from lots of different parts of the world. It's also a liquid or semi-liquid, so it's quite easy to mix with other things as well. Put all those things together, it's a top issue in terms of fraud.
And it matters more for us in the UK because most of our honey is imported. Turn a jar or a squeezy bottle round in the supermarket and peer at the small print on the label. You'll usually see a phrase like made from a blend of non-EU honeys or product of more than one country or a short list of countries from around the world that have contributed to the honey inside. Local it isn't, because we make so little of our own, just 14% of what we eat, according to the Honey Authenticity Network. And of the 60,000 tonnes of honey we imported in 2024, most of it, 77%, came from China. China also happens to be the country most suspected by specialists of honey adulteration.
China by far is the biggest honey producer in the world, and they don't produce honey like most people think about. It's not just, a few beehives sitting in the back of a garden. It is mass produced. The scale is incredible. And also, it is very controlled industry where generally for those bees, they just get fed sugar. They don't have to go out and look for the pollen and feed on it. They will be mass produced honey. And that's why it can be produced so cheaply. And that's the big thing about Chinese honey. It's a fraction of the cost of honey from other parts of the world.
The Food Standards Agency points to two main techniques for adulteration. Either, as Chris suggested, indirectly by feeding bees with sugars constantly, even when nectar is naturally available, or done directly, bulking out the honey through the addition of a cheaper sugar or syrup.
So in the old days, it used to be just straightforward corn syrup or something like that. And I can taste that. That's something I'm very used to tasting, is the simple sugars. It's beyond that now. There's tailor-made sugars. They're made literally to order in China. This is a scandal hiding in plain view. Somebody did some amazing footage from a Paris food show of Chinese people sitting there saying, which test do you want your syrup to pass? So they will literally concoct for you a tailor-made syrup which can actually resemble the plant sources that might be appropriate for that. They could pad it out with the appropriate pollens, which would say, yes, this is the honey from the place that they say, and it will pass very sophisticated tests. It's very hard for honey fraud to be cracked.
As much as we all love honey, it's more than 95% just sugar. So what you do is you mix it with cheaper sources of sugar. And those cheaper sources are all generally plant-based. It can be from sugar cane. I was reading an article recently where actually it was some sugars that were being extracted from beetroot because there was a big surplus of beetroot. So that sugar was being used. So this is all about cost. The honey itself is quite a pricey commodity, and that will get blended, diluted down with cheaper sources of sugar.
Are there any health implications about fake honey if you're consuming it?
Two things which always concern me about the adulteration of honey. The first is if it's been adulterated with plant-based sugars, that is okay. But you've got to think about these people who are cheating. Do they really care about the quality or the safety of what they're bulking honey out with? And the other thing that really does concern me is that particularly in the mass-produced honey industry, they have big issues about disease of bees. And what they tend to do is very liberally treat the beehives with huge quantities of antibiotics, sprayed by planes, believe it or not, across the beehives. That's a way that we're getting antibiotics into the food supply chain. There's all sorts of issues about antimicrobial resistance there. And again, I know that the UK food industry does a lot of testing for antibiotics in honey, particularly those that come from China.
The European Commission published a report 3 years ago called From the Hives. 320 samples of honey taken at border control posts across Europe were analysed. 46% of the samples, almost half, were suspected to be fraudulent, and all 10 of the honey samples taken from the UK failed the tests. But these findings have since been disputed by scientific experts, with questions raised over the techniques and methodologies used in the study. As we'll hear in the programme, this is a complicated subject where tests are not fully trusted and definitions of what honey actually is can be challenged. Later on, I'll be talking to the UK's two top honey packers, Rowse and Hilltop, to get their response to reports like that from the EU and to find out what they're doing to stop fake honey ending up in our shops and supermarkets. Here's a taster of Hilltop's views from founder Scott Davis.
In any world, in any life, Sheila, right, you have trust is ultimately that's what it boils down to, and that we're trying our very best. I'm out there inspecting everywhere. We make sure we've spoken and seen people that we buy off. We go and see the four walls they're operating in. We do the traceability of the beehives. There's a lot that we do. And for us as a brand, we want people to have faith in honey. Never mind Hilltop for a second. We need and want the people to believe in honey. So we're trying to be part of that solution.
But before we get to the question of whether big companies are part of the solution, let's look at the really big picture. At the recent World Beekeeping Awards, the Best Honey category, the competition where the gold medal of all gold medals is awarded, had to be cancelled because the organisers said they couldn't guarantee that the honeys lined up for that top award were definitely pure honey. Producer Robin Markwell was there.
I've come along to the largest beekeeping convention in the world. It's known as Appimondia. It happens every 2 years, and this time it happens to be in Copenhagen. It is vast. I'm in a huge exhibition space, and attending here today, more than 8,000 beekeepers from 120 countries around the world.
So I'm Lynn Ingram. I'm a beekeeper from Somerset, and I'm the chair of the Honey Authenticity Network UK. So over here we've got the World Beekeeping Awards. There's no honey in it this year. Normally there is, but not this year. But there's lots of other things. So there's wax displays of inventions to do with beekeeping.
But no honey?
No honey.
It's significant, isn't it?
Well, it is, because obviously this was really important. People like to be able to say if they won the first prize that they had the best honey in the world. But because they couldn't ensure that it was really authentic what was coming in, they decided they couldn't really have it in the show this year, which was a shame, a real shame.
I mean, it's saddening, isn't it? I mean, that's your showpiece product.
Absolutely. And there were some fabulous honeys, because there were honeys from all over the world, so different flavours, different countries. And here, though, they've got instead this global honey bar. And there's over 200 honeys here, so this is your chance to taste honey from everywhere. Different honeys. There's 5, I think, from Britain in there.
It's an enormous circle of tables.
It is.
We've got maybe a dozen or so attendants in aprons serving people.
Yes.
Just endless jars, it seems, of all different colours of honey, as well as you see the true rainbow of honey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with honey. Honey is just like a wine. You've got all these different colours, flavours, sort of viscosity, everything. And that's what real honey is, not just amber liquid in a squeezy bottle. Oh, these are just from Scandinavia, so this is Appimondia Scandinavia. They've got pride of place here. Should we try some of these?
Yeah, my name is Bjørn Børserud, and I'm from Norway, and I'm a beekeeper. This is the Scandinavian section of honey. So we have samples from Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, and it's from like early spring honey to heather honey.
You go from like number 6, looks like lemon curd.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. That's actually typical honey that I get myself from in my apiaries. It's a mix of dandelion, blueberry, raspberry, and clover. Yeah,
that's great.
What are you tasting, Lynn?
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, you're getting different flavours coming through.
Yeah, very fresh and not so heavy. It's very fresh.
Yes, it is, yes.
And the colour is insane.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, it does look like lemon curd in terms of colour, doesn't it? But you go from that to much darker ones. I mean, this one more towards.
We can try. My personal favourite, if I should put an all-rounder, I will go for this multi-flower honey. Yeah. That's very good. I think you should try it.
Okay.
Lynn is feeding me honey while I record. And that's delicious. It's
I love that.
Yeah. Can you describe it then? What are you getting?
Well, you've got sweetness, but you've also got almost a tanginess that comes sort of in the top of your mouth there.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's reflecting all the different flowers that the bees have worked on.
Is Scandinavian honey the best in the world then?
Yeah.
Is it better than British honey?
Yeah.
Oh.
The thing is, every beekeeper should know that their honey is the best in the world.
Yes.
My name is Deborah Smith, and I'm an international honey show judge.
What a job title.
It's a fantastic job. It involves assessing the quality and presentation of honeys, in this case from across the globe.
Your taste buds must be worth a fortune, Deborah.
I try to train them well and keep them in good condition.
And just it's interesting being at this stand because there's row upon row of tables here with honeys from all around the world on. Can you give us a sort of broad overview about how honeys change from country to country?
They're extremely different, and it depends primarily on the foraging. And so you can have everything from a very light, delicate honey to an extremely strong, smoky sometimes, powerful dark honey from the same country, because as in the UK you get a huge variety across one country depending on the different flowers that the bees are foraging on.
And we've talked about the rainbow of colours here, but also it's the change in texture too, isn't it? They can taste so very different.
Yes, the very liquid ones are one thing, but there are some that are like smooth butter, which are really pleasing on the palate. I've got quite an unusual palate in that I like the really bitter and the powerful. But as a honey show judge, you judge the whole range.
And Deborah, can I ask you about this business of international honey fraud?
It's very challenging for beekeepers, for the market to be swamped by products that are not honey and which are coming in very cheaply. And really you need quite advanced testing, which has been the problem. How to organise the testing for the competitions is tragic for the bees, for the beekeepers, for the consumer.
As an expert taster, Deborah, I don't know, can you tell the difference in taste?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, the complexity of floral flavours and aromas in a natural honey is just absent if it's a syrup. You would be better having sugar white granulated than having the so-called honeys that are not honey. Because apart from anything else, the syrups have been modified and are not natural products any longer.
So you can tell almost immediately, can you?
Immediately, yeah. Yes, there's no question.
The reverberations caused by honey fraud are being felt across the world. In the South American section of the Global Honey Bar, I met honey producer Mauricio Rosales from Ecuador.
I think it's a big issue for our industry. It's an issue that affects us real producers because, of course, it put a lot of pressure on the profitability of our industry. Honey adulteration pulls the prices down. At least in my country, our experience is that the shelves of the biggest supermarket chains are filled with fake products, which leave us almost no space for competing in first place.
So just producing it, you're just covering your costs. That is it. You're not making any profit, just literally staying above water.
Exactly. So it's around 30% of our selling price. So it's not an actual competition. It's a massacre. They have the best weapon in their favor, which is prices. People want to pay as less as they can and have the most quantity. So as long as this dynamic is in place, we all lose, I think.
Several sessions at Appomondia were dedicated to fighting honey fraud and developing more effective screening techniques that could root out adulterated batches. Dr. Jeff Pessis, the president of the International Federation of Beekeeping Organizations, says battling the fraudsters is a constant struggle.
It definitely poses a big threat. We have beekeepers all over the globe, not just in Europe or UK or US, that can't continue to exist with this price of honey. It really needs to rebound. And the only way to do that is to catch some of this fraud. It's been going on probably 20 or 30 years. But in the past, it was very crude. It started with high fructose corn syrup, which we all know. So then we developed tests. We can catch the high fructose corn syrup. They've gotten more and more sophisticated with what they're adding to hide, to adulterate the honey. So recently, in the last 10 years, it's really grown kind of almost exponentially, the honey fraud.
So not just corn syrup, but what other sort of things are going in?
So there's some rice syrup that they've developed that a lot of the tests are undetectable. You can't, it's sweet, it has the same sweetness, and if it's added, I don't know what the percent is, but if it added 5 or 10%, some of the methods can't detect it. They've just gotten more and more sophisticated with the types of adulterants, the types of syrups that they add.
How can you detect it? Why isn't it easy to say? Just sample a bit, you can tell there's corn syrup or something in there.
Well, some of us that are fairly well educated in honey taste, you can taste it immediately. It's kind of bland and doesn't have any vibrancy to it. And the testing, we just don't have a simple test that can catch all the different types of fraud that's going out, whether it's rice syrup, corn syrup, or some other kind of adulteration. We just don't have the one single test that'll catch it all.
Isn't that astonishing, though, in this modern age that this doesn't exist?
We should be able to take a little drop of the honey, put it in a reader, and boom, and find the answer. We're getting better. They're developing some new DNA testing for origin and stuff, and if there's other things that are non-honey in there, then it would be fraudulent. So the testing's getting better. but the fraud is widespread, unfortunately.
I'm Federico Berron. I have been in the honey business now for 42 years.
Which country are you from, Federico?
Mexico. I'm an economist, and I have kept bees up to 600 hives, and I've traded over 250,000 tons of honey over my life experience.
Wow, that's serious numbers. And you enjoy it? You enjoyed the honey trade?
Yes, until I discovered the market was becoming ruined by fraud, to the fact that I had to quit.
Are we seeing beekeepers going out of business in parts of the world already?
Oh, incredibly. This is what made me feel very bad and unable to continue, because I see many friends have gone out of business. Many. Mexico is especially, and I've been traveling in Asia, for example, and Japan used to produce 13,000 tons. They now produce 4,000 tons. India, if you look at February in the Times of India, they are doing protests and they are going out of business. I was in Philippines, a lot of adulteration everywhere, Indonesia. It's a very sad situation. In China, the president of the beekeepers was a bit angry at me. He told me, "Oh, Mr. Barron, you should know that if somebody's selling honey below $6, it must be adulterated." And yes, they even suffer what is happening in China. The situation has been going on for too long. European beekeepers, they started their complaints in 2015, and they just got a real answer, an effective answer past year, 2024, that the solution will be effective on 2029.
And what's that solution going to be for the Europeans then?
Well, they're working on it. They have a working group that meets every 6 months. So I am of the idea that we as beekeepers have to take the issue in our hands and create our own body of authentication and make this legal worldwide.
For Norberto Garcia, the chair of the Scientific Commission on Beekeeping Economy at Epimondia, there's a far graver threat underpinning this international crime.
The problem in the end is not only honey, it's the survival of commercial beekeepers who are responsible of taking the beehives to pollinate your crops, your fruits, your vegetables. Something has to be done, and quite quickly, to assure the food security of your countries. That's the biggest problem in the end, because suppose that one day you cannot produce sufficient honey, as it is also occurring. You can import good honey from other producing countries. But what about the bees? You need the bees to pollinate your fruits, your vegetables. It would be an absolute extreme crisis if bees start disappearing in Europe. And at least 30% of all the food that you produce in your countries here in Europe rely on bees pollination. And bees pollination is not wild bees, it's commercial bees. It's the beekeepers that put the beehives there. So if the honey price is not sufficient, they will abandon their beekeeping operations. And who will pollinate?
Norberto Garcia, reminding us that this isn't just a story about honey fraud, but also of global food security. The lack of a comprehensive catch-all test that could root out all types of fraud remains a huge challenge. DEFRA said it worked closely with enforcement authorities to ensure all food sold in the UK is free from adulteration. The UK Food Standards Agency told us that
honey is a complex natural product, and no single test can definitively confirm honey's authenticity. New techniques and tools are being developed to help businesses, government and local enforcement agencies tackle honey fraud now and in the future, so consumers can have greater confidence of what they're picking up in their weekly shop.
So, how certain can we be when we're buying honey that that is what it is? Professor Chris Elliott again.
I work closely with the UK food industry. There is what's called the FIN Group, the Food Industry Intelligence Network. That is 70, maybe 80 of the largest retailers, manufacturers now. They do a lot of testing for lots of different commodities, and honey is one of their top priorities. I've talked with them about it, and they are very, very careful about their surveillance. And there are, very few indications that there's any issues in mainstream large-scale retail in the UK. So I think The short answer, if you buy it from a large supermarket in the UK, we're probably okay, but cheats are really, they're ingenious. I mean, I wish I had the intelligence of some of them, because some of the scams they come up with are just amazing.
Like what?
The filtering of the pollen was one example. Then for some of the honey tests, actually back to Manuka, there is a particular marker in Manuka honey you can test for to go, actually, yes, that's Manuka. And of course, what the cheats did, they got that marker synthesized and produced and started to add it to their honey. So that marker was there again. They're generally 1 or 2 steps ahead of the testing regimes. I think we're making it even more difficult for those people to cheat now. But my goodness, it is, trying to keep 1 step ahead of people who are generally 2 steps ahead of the industry.
How accurate are the tests for honey purity? I mean, it seems from what you're saying that that's too simple a question.
For all types of food testing, people who claim that the method is 100% accurate and reliable, actually, it's stretching the truth. A good test will be 95% accurate, maybe up to 98% accurate, but there will always be issues that we call it uncertainty of the method. And that always has to be taken into account, that uncertainty. And if you think something is 95% accurate or reliable, you think, well, that's a pretty good number. But actually what that means is 1 time in 20, you get the wrong result.
If you were suddenly catapulted to running DEFRA, what would you do to make the honey chain clearer?
There has been lots of discussions, debates and arguments, I will tell you, between the UK food industry and DEFRA about honey. Often I think DEFRA is dysfunctional in many ways. But in terms of honey, I do have a bit of sympathy for them, because I think the industry wants DEFRA to say, here is the test to use which will give you absolute certainty. And those don't exist. So it really is about, you need, as I describe it, the toolbox. You need the toolbox of testing, inspections and audits to really know what's truly going on.
Professor Chris Elliott, if a toolbox is required, do the big honey players have the tools? In a statement, the British Honey Importers and Packers Association told us,
honey sold by our members, which is likely to constitute a large proportion of honey sold in the UK, is rigorously and repeatedly tested at different points in the supply chain and, critically, can be traced. To date, we have seen no credible, independent or solid scientific or regulatory evidence suggesting consumers should be concerned about honey sold on UK supermarket shelves.
So let's see what the 2 top honey importers and packers in Britain have to say. The biggest is Rowse, founded in Oxfordshire in 1938 by a Mr. Rowse, now owned by the international food brand Valeo Food Group, which is in turn owned by the global investment group Bain Capital.
So my name is Tim Reed. I'm the Senior Category Manager for honey at Valeo Foods UK. One of our brands is Rowse Honey. So I'm speaking to you today on behalf of Rowse Honey.
Rowse doesn't often engage with the media. Why did you decide that you would talk to us?
So this is a subject that's come up in various forms over many years. There is, sadly, an awful lot of opinionated misinformation shared on the topic. And I think it's healthy that there's a reputable discussion taking place.
Well, we'll hope for reputability. Is that the right word? Yes. So how can people in the UK be sure that the honey you supply is authentic? Any honey coming in from China, and that's where most of the honey comes from into this country, is Rowse there in every step of the supply chain?
Sure. So regardless of the country of origin, all the honey sourced by Rowse is 100% pure and natural and traceable back to the beekeeper. Yes, we are present in the supply chain from the start to the end, regardless of the country of origin. We have long-standing relationships with our beekeepers all around the world. We do a significant amount of testing. So at every step in the supply chain, honey is tested. Prior to export from the country of origin, a sample is taken and tested either in a UK, EU, or in the case of Manuka honey, New Zealand laboratory. After shipping and arriving in the UK, it's sampled by our own people and tested again. Finally, after bottling, it's tested one more time before it ever makes it out to a retail shelf.
But as we discovered talking to Professor Chris Elliott, the difficulty of anyone having complete confidence in the purity of honey is that there's no catch-all test for these sophisticated and ever-changing forms of fraud. I mean, as he said, there are some very, very smart people in the fraud business these days.
I think if you were to summarise that as to say there's no single test, I would absolutely agree with you. And it's around the weight of evidence approach. So through monitoring, tracking the supply chain with regards to the volume going in, the volume coming out, you can monitor at that basic level. With regards to chemical testing, it's a mixture of laboratory testing and organoleptic testing. A experienced honey taster could tell you the country of origin, the floral sources, potentially even the time of year involved in the honey simply by the smell, the taste and the texture. And when I say we test our honey when it arrives here in the UK, I'm talking about laboratory testing. But of course, I'm also talking about taste testing, smell testing as well.
Many retailers sell your 250-gram squeezy bottles of honey for around £2. How is it possible to produce that much, 250 grams of honey for £2, and sometimes less?
I think you can compare that to almost any traded or large-scale production of any agricultural product. There's an economy of scale. I think you often will hear from small-scale hobby beekeepers a quote along the lines of, I can't buy the jar for that price. And that's absolutely true. If you or I were to try and source 20, 50 jars, it would cost significantly more than a company packing honey on our scale would pay for the packaging. Now, on the honey itself, the honey window here in the UK where you can produce honey is very, very short. Compare that to an equatorial country or somewhere in the tropics that's able to produce honey almost 12 months a year. On top of that, you have the scale of your average beekeeper. Here in the UK, there are a relatively small number of professional or commercial beekeepers. So many hobbyist beekeepers may have 10, 15, 25 hives. Compare that to countries around the world where a single beekeeper and their staff may have 4,000 to 5,000 hives. They're producing an awful lot more honey. That is also before you get into the fact that the cost of living and the expected profit or salary a beekeeper needs to make varies wildly around the world.
So your squeezy bottle, do you ever have a conscience that you're driving British beekeepers out of business?
Absolutely not. There's a place for various types of honey in the market.
You are asking us for a lot of trust. And we know from, we've had our food scandals in this country that do have to do with opaque food chains. So we should trust you.
There is an element of that for sure. And we are advocates of increased testing and we support the development of new tests. I think it would be fair to say that if there was a silver bullet laboratory test, it would make everybody's life a lot easier. And we would certainly support that.
The Honey Authenticity Network, which raises awareness of honey fraud, is calling for better labelling. This is what's happening across the EU, where from next year, the countries of origin in honey blends will have to appear on the label in percentage order. The UK's second largest honey supplier, Hilltop Honey, founded in Wales and still based there, has already made it easier for shoppers to know what they're buying. Their bottles now have traceability codes that you can scan. The scan takes you to a website that spells out the country or countries of origin and the characteristics of honey from that place. Hilltop's founder and CEO is Scott Davis.
It's a leap of faith to say that just knowing where it's come from is enough. And for me, we've talked to internally at Hilltop, do we put the names of the tests that you've passed on the front of the honey? Well, consumers just don't know that. It's just too much detail. If I put LCH RMS approved on the front of a honey pack, who knows what that is, right? And then there'll be another test around the corner. And I think for us, the frustration, Sheila, in the industry is that there's no coherence around what the testing facility is, right? Every country has an opinion. And the worst part about it is, Sheila, is that in the world, there's about 3 laboratories that are governing this, and they come up with tests every year. And they're not working at one with the honey industry to find out what it is we're trying to solve. The honey industry, I can speak for most packers probably in the whole of Europe, that everybody just wants to be able to sleep easy at night, that they're doing the right thing and they're packing the right product. And it's a massive chasm in that there's no cohesion at all. And it's frustrating for pretty much any honey packer I've ever spoken to. For honey, generally, it needs to be better, right? The world over, it just needs to get better.
What do you mean when you say it needs to get better?
In terms of the faith in the product, right? In terms of the way we talk about it, why are we the ones that have got the QR codes on the back? No one's done that. That technology has been there for a long time. You know, there's things that we could do as brand owners and as packers to further people's understanding of this. But I think everybody's scared. So I think as packers and producers out there, everybody's petrified of stepping foot in the wrong direction. But for us as a brand, we're trying to do the right thing, which is trying to open that transparency of what's going on.
Transparency and better understanding. But honey in the UK hasn't had the attention that many of us now give to choosing a wine, a beer, or even a bottle of olive oil.
My name's Gino Jabbar, and I am the chairman and co-founder of the Honey Guild of the United Kingdom. You could say of any food type, honey is the taste of the landscape more than other products because the bees visit the flowers in that whole area, and it's kind of a fingerprint in time of what was blooming at that time in that year. We are at such a cultural stage with, say, our understanding of cheeses in the UK that you would send your kid or a loved one to the shop to buy Parmesan, and if they brought back cheddar cheese, well, you'd be a bit cross. But we're not at that stage yet with honey. We're sending someone to get a jar of heather honey and they come back with thyme honey and you get annoyed. We still live in this world of set and liquid honey, which doesn't really mean much. You know, we need to think more about honey as a fine food and that it carries both a unique flavour and brings you into a greater appreciation of food itself.
Will we ever get there? Appreciating the subtle lemony characteristics of this honey, the floral nose of that one? Well, let's finish where we began, in Essex, with Dale Gibson and Sarah Wyndham Lewis at Bermondsey Street Bees. No squeezy bottles here for under £2. Their honey comes at prices you'd expect to pay for a pretty decent wine. Back when they sold directly to customers, a 330-gram jar of their most expensive honey would have set you back about £15. In the heart of their honey HQ, Dale and their employee and honey expert Pavlin are moving frames from one of their hives into a steel drum that looks a bit like an upright spin dryer. The frames are 4 wooden bars, top, bottom and 2 sides, that make up a shallow, open box that the bees have filled with honeycomb. Now the honey has to come out of those combs.
We say it's like a drunken dialect. As it goes around the room, it sort of has its own legs and goes beep. And this low growling noise. We haven't yet got the honey pattering out yet.
I can see it's on this collecting on the wall. So it looks like little jewels, little jewel encrusts on this wall inside.
3. This is the honey gate, always left open so everything can breathe, but always closed up before we actually get down to the business of putting the honey through the system. The thing about honey is that it's silent when it leaks. Water drips. You can hear it, whereas honey is so viscous, it's 32% or so thicker than water. So a honey leak can happen without anyone hearing it. And the only sound you hear is the sound of the beekeeper crying. So we try to avoid it.
So I'm going to give you a honey to taste, this is the Lambeth Palace one that you saw. There's a note in here. I'm going to say to you, sweaty armpits.
Great. That sounds appetising.
It does, doesn't it? It's the sweaty armpits of someone you love. How about that?
So I'm not sure that makes it any better, really.
Do the retronotal tasting.
This is from the middle of London. Yeah. It is tropical. It is sort of slightly pineapple-y, slightly mango-y.
So the molecule that you're tasting, my sweaty armpit molecule...
I don't get sweaty armpits.
called 3-MHA, which is also in human sweat. It is so fascinating. Nature doesn't waste anything. It really doesn't. It's
so nice.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fresh and it's lovely and it's invigorating, but you've got this very intriguing...
But it looks the same colour as our roughly as our light and mild.
It's a lot more viscous. It's much thicker.
It's thicker. So now, I mean, how long have you been doing this?
20 years.
So in 20 years, do you feel that we're getting nearer to the point of taking pride?
What I do see is a change in consumer attitudes. It's a consequence of campaigns like the Campaign for Real Bread, which is the one on which I would like to model a campaign for real honey most closely, because I think they're wonderful and they've done such a great job. Real ale, CAMRA, I mean, how brilliant was that? Why do we not have a campaign for real honey? I went to the supermarket the other day and I was looking for a half-decent bottle of wine. Half-decent bottle of wine, 20 quid. And I thought, hang on a second. In the old days when we used to stand on a market stall all those years ago, freezing our feet off on Saturday mornings, and people would say, how much for a jar of honey? £6 for a jar of honey. And then they'd go off and buy 2 coffees in Starbucks. It's also a question of comparative costings.
Well, it's what you value, isn't it? I mean, I was talking to a restaurateur who was having great problems trying to get people to pay, I think it was £15 for a steak and frites, but they were willing to pay £12 for a cocktail.
Yes. A thing I do often if I have consumers in front of me is I'll show them, I haven't got it here, a handful of coffee beans from a single estate, and we know the name of the person who made them, we know the process it went through, and then in my other hand I have a handful of Nescafe Gold, and just say, this is what we're talking about in the honey industry. If you buy the cheap stuff, it's this processed, anonymised product. You don't know where that coffee comes from. You don't know to what extent it even is coffee. And yet in this you see the beans, there they are, just beautiful and scented and packed with both a narrative and real value in terms of flavour. Now, if you explain honey in those terms to people, they usually get it. They suddenly say, gosh, I never thought of it like that.
Well, a lot of us haven't thought of it like that either. And maybe for all of us, honey in its wildness and its unique connection to what keeps the world turning and livable could be the food that gets us thinking about what food actually is and why it might be worth a bit more of our attention. Thanks for listening. It was an interesting programme for producer Robin Markwell and I to make. We both feel more educated about the world now. Robin produced this programme at BBC Bristol, and I recorded it at home in Highbury, North London.